Okay, well, while we're waiting to everybody to take their seats and get their coffee and plump up their cushions, I just want to give a name check to the next webinar in this series on lighting and the sustainable economy. And so date for your diaries, it's going to take place on Tuesday, the 15th of September at 11 o'clock. And that will focus on the next steps. So it'll be about the size, the barriers and the opportunities in this sector and moving towards a circular economy for the lighting industry. And we have two confirmed speakers. One is Helen Looms, who many of you will know at Trelux, and she's going to talk about the EU Recolight project. Now, if you're not familiar with it, the EU Recolight project is a £4 million European funded project, which is trying to create the luminaire of the future, the idealized circular luminaire, which will be deconstructible and have replaceable gear and light source, etc., etc. So it'd be very interesting to see what those guys have come up with after 3 years and £4 million. So that'll be good. So keep an eye out for that. We'll also have Michael Grubb, the well-known lighting designer. He is the creative director of Michael Grubb Studios, and they have, alongside their independent lighting design practice, they have a project called the Relit program, which aims to reuse luminaires, discontinued luminaires and luminaires that manufacturers no longer need in community projects and charity projects. So Tuesday, 15th of September, you can register for that on the Recolight website. So I think everybody's sitting comfortably, then we shall begin. First of all, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning on the second of these Lighting and the Circular Economy webinars, hosted and organized by Recolight. Now, on the first one, back in April, we looked at the regulatory framework and the rules and the regs all coming down the road. And this one, we are going to look at sustainable materials and design, and we have a stellar lineup of speakers for you. As you know, and as you appreciate, this topic is incredibly timely, very urgent, and we all have to play our part. There's loads of regulations coming down. There's a lot of cultural changes. So there's a lot of drivers for change coming down. My name is Ray Molony. I'm going to be your host for the next, say, 90 minutes to 2 hours. I'll give you a short recap on the first webinar in case you missed it, or you were there and I'll just give you a little reminder of it. Few things. First of all, this webinar today is being recorded, and you will also get the slides. So you'll get an email about an hour after this webinar ends. We'll give you a link which will link to the slides, so you can download those, and also you can go back to the recording. Now, the recording of the first webinar is also available, and it's quite easy to find on the Recolight website. You just go to events, their webinars, and just click on it, and you can fast forward through it and all the rest of it, and you can really get a feel for that. So on to today's agenda. Suzanne, could you move the slide on one, please? Thank you. So I'll be handing over in a minute to my former colleague and friend, John Bullock of the Light Review, who will be challenged the lighting industry to be more sustainable. Then we go on to Simon Fisher, a well-known product designer in the lighting sector. And he's director of FMark, and he will be talking about the challenges of designing lighting for a circular economy. He'll be followed by Richard Garrett, the marketing manager of Signify, and he'll be talking about the Signify's sustainability goals and what they are doing. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Signify are certainly a leader in sustainability, and no doubt he'll be talking about their exciting new 3D printing line that they've got going in the Netherlands. Following him, we have Zoltán Pilter of the TUNGSRAM group, who will be talking about sustainable lighting solutions and challenges. And finally, we have a two-hander, the use of sustainable raw materials based on renewable resources. We have both Russell Parr, who's from Primelight, and Torsten Werner, who's a sales manager of Alchemet. And then we'll have some time for questions. I doubt we're going to get all the questions answered today, but our speakers will endeavour to answer them over the next couple of days. A few more housekeeping points. You should have a Q&A. You should be able to see a question and answer box, and that is for your any questions. So anytime during the webinar, you can put questions in. And then you've also got a chat box. Now, if I could ask that you use a chat box only for if you've got any issues with technical issues, and my friend Suzanne will be able to assist you in any of those. So I'm just trying to move the slides on, and they're not misbehaving a bit. So Suzanne,
you've got control, Ray.
Yeah.
You've got control now.
Okay. Okay, so there we go. You get the slide pack, and you get a link to the recording, and you'll also get the presenter's contact details, so that you can reach out to them if you have any more queries or you want to discuss any issues that came up today. Right, I'm going to give you a slight recap of our first webinar, which focused, as I say, on the regs and the standards, and not just in the UK, but also the European-wide environment for regulations. And we had two bright guys from the government in the shape of DEFRA. We had James Butterworth and Matthew Stocks, and they basically set out the broad direction of travel. And you know, it's incredibly ambitious. The UK government wants to double the resource productivity and eliminate avoidable waste by 2050, and that is going to feed through into lots of regulations and standards, etc. What they want to do is end a culture of take it, make it, use it, and throw it away. And I think you could say that you know that has characterized the lighting industry in the past, and you know, there are some egregious examples where, you know, where sometimes even, you know, like modular fittings get ripped out of buildings and they don't even get used in the first place in Cat A fit outs. And what we're going to see coming down the road is a tightening up of the WEEE regs to both increase collections and to increase the reuse of waste electrical and electronic equipment. Also making its way through the Parliament at the moment is the Environment Bill, and that is incorporating the European eco-design and eco-labelling rules. And so they will continue after a transition period into 2021. The government is basically taking a holistic approach to the circular economy, and that will be reflected in all the regulations and incentives. And I think, you know, it's wise and it's proper that the lighting industry move in lockstep with the government's ambitions. Now, Matthew Stocks focused on the principle that producers will have to bear the cost of their environmental impact, and they're going to tweak the WEEE regulations to reflect that principle. So, for instance, it'll be used to encourage good behavior. So, with the WEEE proposals are this concept of modulated fees. So basically you pay different fees depending on how badly or well behaved you are. So for instance, producers who embrace sustainable eco-design principles will be rewarded, and those who don't will face financial penalties. Now, Oriana Georgiou-Tsakou, who is the Secretary General of Lighting Europe, talked broadly about the EU and the laws and policies. Even though we're outside the EU, we will generally be reflecting what's going on there. And as I say, the eco-design and eco-labelling are going to continue incorporated into UK law. Now, the European Union has an ambition to become the world's first climate neutral continent by 2050. And obviously that is going to be reflected in what they do. As we all know, there's been this long-term phase out of traditional technology and old style lamps. Next year, reflector lamps are going, we've got R7s are going, low voltage halogen in the form of the old much loved MR16 is going, MR11s, AR111s are going, and also compact fluorescent lamps with integrated ballasts. Who would have thought that they would eventually get phased out? But there you go. That's the world we live in. And in 2023, we're going to also lose a much loved format. The T8 fluorescent lamp is going, as are the G9, G4, and the GY 6.23, which is the pin, halogen pin lamps are going. So that is all being phased out. The eco-design regulations are going to be tweaked to accommodate the circular economy principles. And there is the famous Article 4, which is bringing back the lamp, hooray. And so removable control gear and removable parts. This is absolutely the big story in European legislation. And instead of a luminaire, we're going to have a thing called a containing product under that definition. And that is reflecting in the design of luminaires and light fittings going forward, that we have to be able to take out the light source and replace it, and the same with the control gear. So it's going to have a massive, massive impact. And there you go. There, it's quite simple in this fitting here, but imagine there's plenty of fittings where it's extremely difficult to separate out the light source and the gear. And here is the lovely new pictograms we're going to have to get used to, which is about which bits are replaceable by a professional, which bits are user replaceable. And the guy appears to have a spanner there. I don't know how that's going to help him, but there you go. They are going to be the pictograms that are going to be applicable to luminaires going forward. There's also the concept of spare parts, and the EU is discussing proposals that manufacturers must keep spare parts for up to 10 years. So this raises the prospect that, you know, a lighting company would have to have the gear and the lamps and parts available for 10 years. I don't know how they're going to enforce that, but that is under active consideration at the moment. And Nigel Harvey walked us through the latest packaging regulations, and big picture there is that they're moving the cost of waste management from local authorities over to producers, and in some cases this will be a big increase that they're going to see in their costs. There's also going to be penalties for non-recyclable packaging, and also it does the whole issue of online vendors of lamps and LED products who are non-compliant with the WEEE regulations. And Nigel's been doing sterling work on this and fighting the good fight, and they've had many successes. And I think it's fair to say that the net is slowly closing in on online vendors who are not playing ball on this issue. And also in the proposals is this distinction between the good products and basically bad products. So there will be the modulated fees. You will pay fewer fees if you can show that your luminaire is good and sustainable. Does it have replaceable gear? Does it have a minimum of recycled plastic? Do you have spare parts available? Do you have a warranty? How long is that warranty? And what is the battery life? So that was a really quick run through the whole regulatory framework that we're going to see over the next decade or so. I'm now going to hand over to Mr. Bullock, who is going to challenge us all to go further really and to be sustainable in the lighting industry. Over to you, John.
Thank you very much, Ray. It's my job to remind us all as to actually why we're here and we're having these conversations. So if you care to strap yourselves in, and I'll see you at the other end. Living sustainably means simply living within one's means. But in more recent times, it also means meeting the needs of present and future generations. Because as far as that's concerned, we've got a bit of a problem. This is where we live. Everything that we need, everything that we require comes from our own planet, which is that little circle around about there. Suzanne, I'm not sure that I've got control here, because that's not me doing that.
Yeah, it's a delay with it. Yeah, it's not letting me click your control, Ray. Sorry, John, can you just request control again?
I can. Sorry, everybody. Here we go.
When I click oh, there you go. You've got it now.
I've got it. I've got it. I'm on stream. Okay. Yeah, I was just saying, basically, everything that we've got, everything that we need comes from the place where we live. This is our home. This is the earth. This is where everything is, except for one thing. And that one thing comes from a very noisy neighbor about 93 million miles down the road. And that is the thing that provides us with a free and a constant supply of radiant energy. Now, we as a species, we've had a decent relationship with that neighbor for the past 500,000 years. Give or take 1 or 2 ups and downs in the process. But things recently have taken a bit of an unpleasant turn. And we are now the proverbial frog in the saucepan. Right, we get there. 250 years ago, we set out on a great adventure. And that adventure was to look for ways to create motive power that wasn't tied to the natural energy resources that were available to us, which is really just wind and water. We needed things to go around a lot quicker. That's what we decided. And appropriately enough, we decided to call this drive for motive power the Industrial Revolution. Ha! Stunningly successful, as we'll all agree, and we've all benefited from it. And there is certainly no argument around that. But James Watt, who was not the most modest and humble of chaps, was a bit hubristic at times, and he said, nature can be conquered if we can but find her weakness. Unfortunately, he was wrong, because he never really had the full picture. Because in order for the motive power industrial revolution to work, we had to dig into the earth and we needed to get out of it lots and lots of resources. The coal and the oil that we have been burning for the last couple of 100 years has been in the ground for millions of years and is a store of carbon dioxide because it used to be forest and it used to be various bits of organic matter. And when it went under the ground, it just contained all of the carbon dioxide. We decided to dig all of that up and burn it. Consequently, all that carbon dioxide that was trapped underground has just bubbled to the surface and has gone straight up into the atmosphere. And that is changing our relationship with the sun, because the solar energy, the radiant power, is not reaching us in the same way that it used to. And so that's a bit of a problem. And this is the problem. This is a graph that shows carbon going into the atmosphere since 1750, which is just before Watt invented his steam engine, developed his steam engine, if you like. And you can see which way that curve's going. And there is no sign of that curve stopping. All the good talk that everybody's in, we are not doing it. That's the problem. If we come in and we just focus on what's happening over the last generation, then we know this one because we are seeing climate events all the time. We are seeing the effect of extreme weather. Here we've got the graph on sea level rises. These are at the moment inexorable. We are not doing enough to make them go away, to make them change. The consequences we've got in that is that we're seeing flooding, or we're seeing desertification, or we're seeing that old biblical thing, plague. And whether that's a plague of locusts or whether that's a plague of viruses, it's all coming from the same source. Or it's wildfire. All of those things will come and will attack us in some kind of violence, I'm afraid, because what we're talking about is we've got millions of people on the move. We've got a loss of land for food. We've got loss of habitat. We have got people who are going to say, we have nowhere to live. Where are we going to go? And as we've seen in the last decade or more, it's unlikely to be a pleasant response when we get to that. This is not an event, by the way. This is a process. The effect of climate change has been going on long enough. So it's not as if we're waiting for a cup final and we can buy tickets. We're in it. We are already in the game. And for us at the moment, it looks like this. Temporary climate events which are coming along and are disrupting the way we live and the way we work. The problem that we have in some areas of the world is that that same issue of flooding is near as damn it permanent now. Land is being lost. And water will have its own way because there's either too much of it or there just isn't enough. So in areas of sub-Saharan Africa, for example, where the desert is just moving south, it's taking with it agricultural land and it is bringing with it millions of people, as I say, who have nowhere to live and no way of creating food for themselves. So that's the kind of thing that is really happening. For us, this is what we can look forward to. Our problem is water. We're a small island and we're on the east coast of a very big ocean. And it is reckoned that when the Thames Barrier for London was first opened, it was meant to operate 2 or 3 times a year. It's now operating 6 or 7 times a year. And, quote, subject to appropriate modification, it shouldn't fail permanently until about 2070, which for those of you with little kids, that's in their lifetime and that's easy. And bear in mind that no other UK coastal city has got that kind of protection. So by 2050, if nothing else happens, we can expect to have lost huge parts of East Anglia, the Somerset levels, the coastal marshes, permanently underwater, gone because we haven't taken seriously what it means to start to stop that upward curve of the carbon in the atmosphere. So what's to be done? Let's point a finger, shall we? Let's actually look and say, maybe that's what's causing the problem, what's causing this problem. Because it all came down to there was money to be made. Why did we need things to go around faster? Because there was money to be made. And the shift from a rural economy to an industrial economy brought with it a massive change in the way that we looked at what it was that we were trying to get out of this world. And the thing that we wanted above all was financial capital. And one of the great images of this, I think, is in Birmingham, in Broad Street. And what we have there is a thing called the Golden Boys. This is James Watt talking with Matthew Bolton and William Murdoch. If you're from the Midlands, you'll know all about this. William Murdoch, by the way, he developed gaslighting, so he's one of us in a way. But they're very golden and they're very shiny because they made an awful lot of money for relatively few people, because about 10 miles down the road, this is what was going on. This is the Black Country, my home area, of course. And this is sort of Wolverhampton in the middle of the 19th century. And that is carbon dioxide being pumped into the sky. So where do we go? Oh, here's the thing. We don't have those chimneys anymore, do we? So why are we worried? Well, I'm sorry, those chimneys are still here, but they're somewhere else. We've just exported them. So there is still carbon dioxide being pumped into the air. We're just not seeing it. What we've done is that we've made it nice and clean. It's in motor cars. It's in airplanes. It's in power stations. That carbon is still making its way into the atmosphere. Meanwhile, there are other things that we need to look at. This thing is called the triple bottom line. And this looks at not just financial capital, but it looks at human capital. Well, hey, let's say, and animal and vegetable and mineral capital, as well as the environment. And it's the environment that is, at the moment, I think, is holding the trump card for us. This is the way that we need to move. Of course, it's important that we make money because we can't really see an alternative to doing that. But we have got to look at the capital that is engaged in the rest of the way that we live. So what do we need to do if we focus on the environment? Here's a graph from the Centre for Research into Energy Demand Solutions in Oxford. And what they're saying is, if you want to make a difference, these are the top 4 things. You live car-free. maybe you invest in an electric car. You reduce your long-haul flights, and you use renewable energy. And then we just go down the list even further. Sadly for us, this is not something that the rest of the world can help with, because the truth of the matter is that half of the carbon emissions that are going up into the sky are coming from 10% of the population. And that's us. It's basically North America and it's Europe are creating 50% of the problem. Kevin Anderson, who's a professor at Manchester and at Uppsala, and I think he's got another one over there as well. This is the point that he makes. If the world's richest 10% just reduce their carbon emissions to the European average, we could see the world's emissions go down by 30%. All we need is for rich people to do something about it. David Attenborough, who always deserves a name check on things like this, is quite clear. This is about government. We can do good things, but we have to bring governments with us, because the likelihood of government just waking up one morning going, we've had this fantastic idea about trying to reduce carbon in the atmosphere, without the rest of us going, knocking on the door and saying, any chance we can have a chat about this, is zero. So it comes down to us. We're the ones who today need to be looking at what our changes need to be. So what are the low-hanging fruits? What are the things that we can get into now? I don't mean now, I mean at the end of the webinar, because there's too much good stuff going on in the webinar for you to do that. But what are those low-hanging fruits? Do we have a policy on the way that our staff travel? We've never thought about it. Anybody who says they have, don't believe you. We've always had company cars. We've always jumped in the motor. We've always used the easiest way to get around, and that needs to change. And yes, wouldn't it be great if we could go to all our meetings on a bicycle or a walk down the street? That suggests there's something else that needs to happen. But we have to get rid of this. This is not good enough. And however romantic this is, we've only enjoyed it for a generation. It doesn't hold. We cannot afford to sustain an airline industry. So I'm sorry, it's not just about one long-haul flight in a year. It's about really considering whether we can afford, with a capital A, to have an airline industry at all. So where do we meet people? Well, let me say, I've been talking about this for the last 10 years, and it's time to teleconference. It's time to do what we're doing now. The last 4 months for us has been a fantastic learning opportunity that shows how we do not have to physically get in our motor cars, drive 3 hours up the motorway, have a 1 hour meeting, drive 3 hours back down the motorway. We can be more efficient. We can have a 1 hour meeting using a camera and a microphone. And then guess what? We've got 6 hours of the day left to do stuff. So let's make more of this. Let's make sure really that the teleconference becomes the default position when it comes to communicating with other people. I thought twice about putting this one in, but I don't think we can avoid it. Exhibitions are a huge drain on resources. They're not just on energy, and not just on the amount of carbon that gets pushed up in the air as a consequence, but the sheer cost of putting these things on. So Frankfurt, Hong Kong, Light Fair, all the big international shows are really, can we afford to keep on doing that? I don't think so. I am interested to see what's going to happen in the autumn, because we've heard from our friends at Lux Live that there won't be a Lux Live this year, but there will be a digital version. There will be a digital festival in November. And I think that could be the thing that sparks a whole new generation of ways of meeting others, which we had normally done through exhibitions. Where does our electricity come from? If we look inside the company, where do we get our electricity? We can change that, because we do not have to maintain links with people who are using fossil fuels to generate electricity. We can look at renewables much more efficiently now than we used to be able to. So let's get on with that one straight away, shall we? And what about the people who we are working with on a almost daily basis? Are they doing the same things as we're doing? Are these companies using renewables? I've always loved this photograph that Hovis put out a few years back. An electric truck, and it's really green. It's fun. But that's what the questions we should be asking. What are people that we're dealing with? How are they looking at this process? And one for the bosses here. How are we investing our money? How are we investing our funds? What about our pension schemes? What about all the money that's in the bank, and what is that doing for us? It's time to make sure that we're dealing with investments that are not supporting fossil fuel extraction, and instead of that are looking at all kinds of initiatives to invest in renewable energy generation and renewable energy use, because that's where we really, again, what we need to be doing very, very much. So, the business of doing business. The day-to-day stuff of whether you've got staff working at home or whether you've got them in the office, ask them what they're up to. Ask them what they think the company can do to make things better. It's the domestic stuff, because all of that will matter. And I don't think that bosses have got really the majority of common sense in this one, because we all live in the same world. So why don't we listen to people? And then that we might also find that in listening to people, we get a buy-in from people who at the moment are possibly feeling a little bit alienated from process. That one that clicked through very quickly there. If you're not quite sure what to do, try not to do bad stuff. It's called the precautionary principle. If you think there might be something bad on the end of it, best not. Do some more research. The triple bottom line is about a chain of events, a closed chain of events, because we are all in this together. We do not work alone. So we have a virtuous circle of activity, if you will. Each of us constitutes a link. Who we deal with is the next link and the next link. In order to make a chain, all of those links need to be equally robust. The one thing that we cannot afford is the weak link. And there's only two things that you can do if you've got a weak link. One, you ain't got a chain. The whole thing just falls apart. This is not an option. Or you just get rid of the weak links and you replace them with more robust ones. So which of us can afford to consider ourselves as being a weak link? I'd like to ask you. And so we get to the end. Just one more thing before I go. I thought I'd cast the runes on this. So challenge, this idea of challenge, what do we mean by challenge? So what do the runes tell us? Well, challenge has got all in it. And if you shuffle them around, oh dear, all change, all change. And there's a floating E. So maybe the E world, maybe the world of digital communications is there that could well be the savior of us. That's all from me. I'm now going to hand over to Simon Fisher, my good friend Simon Fisher, who's going to talk about the challenges, again, of designing for a circular economy. If you've been listening, thank you very much. Simon, it's over to you.
Oh, John, thank you so much. Just while I'm making sure I get the gremlins out of the system and get control of this.
You got it.
Marvellous. Yeah, just take a couple of seconds to reflect on what John has talked about there. It really does set the scene on how desperate our cause is, not to put too fine a point on it. And as a product designer to this industry, I think as a business, we've been designing sustainably for many years, but actually designing for a circular economy poses a different set of challenges and a different set of tasks in order to achieve success for designing in a circular economy. So the next few slides that I'm going to run through really just kind of outlines some of the challenges we've seen, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years, as you know, the principles of circular economy become better established and more well known across a broader cross section of certainly of our industry. And I'm going to set it out in 3 main areas. The first one being, he says, trying to change the slide. There we go. The first one being, it's more than product design. Now, I'll expand on that as we go. But yes, so basically we're in a situation where product design holds an awful lot of the keys, an awful lot of the capability of our industry to develop circular economy principles. And actually on the face of it, you know, kind of all the ingredients of your regular light fittings are sustainable sources or sustainable materials: steel, aluminium, polycarbonate, acrylic. So certainly on the face of it, we actually do have the ingredients to, you know, develop products that meet circular requirements. But within this little subsection, you know, we've certainly identified that there are additional things that we can do to make that even better. I've just touched on a few here, but you know, altering our, you know, we look at circular inputs, and that's around really material selection, making sure that our materials, you know, where possible, are common. And that means that we can then consider how we change our metrics for success. So historically, you know, sustainability, or a metric of success of sustainability, is that we can recycle the product at the end of its life. Now, if you then align that to circular economy principles, you know, recycling should be the very, very last thing that we consider doing within a circular economy. So changing the metrics and looking at how we design our products will be very important, and certainly some of the regulations are going to help us do that, that Ray alluded to earlier. Product use extension. Now, increasing modularity, you know, replacing drivers and replacing LEDs is one thing. We need to also consider moving away from what we principally are, which is a single-use economy still. Lighting is still a single-use economy. We specify it, we install it, or we manufacture it, we install it, and then at the end of the life, if we're really lucky, it gets recycled. If you're part of one of the associated schemes. But if we're really clever and we move forward in a holistic way, then we can design for multiple life scenarios. And what I mean by that is that we can take our fitting and we can do something else with it when it's achieved the end of its, you know, useful first life. And then, of course, we got the challenging the status quo, and that's about looking at the businesses that complement luminaire design and complement luminaire manufacturing, and challenge them to do more as well. It's interesting that, you know, control gear manufacturers now, like Tridonic, are implementing a process of publishing environmental declarations for each of their products. That's fantastic. I don't think every manufacturer can boast that now. You know, but that kind of principle and that kind of policy will help you develop a solution that allows you to embed circularity. And of course, I'm talking about product design, and the reason why product design, you know, it's more than product design, is that design sits, you know, typically at the very front end of the process of getting a product to market. You don't have to understand the fine print here. You know, take the macro view, which is, you know, design is a slither at the front end. And then actually to address the needs of a circular economy, we have to make changes and you know, embrace design in conjunction with supply chain and the suppliers that we use. And then once we've dealt with that, we need to embrace circular economy and how we work through the assembly process, how we distribute those products. And then of course, you know, the bit that historically we've focused on is recycling at the end of life. And really what we need to do now is look at how we reuse and refurbish products to really close that loop on circularity. And actually, the coming slides, there are some additional focus on how we're going to create kind of the circular process through the whole manufacturing process. My second point of 3 is this is not going to be easy to implement. This is not going to be easy to implement. And what I'm going to do is just highlight a couple of reasons why that won't necessarily be easy to do. You know, the first one is that our supply chain at the moment, in an ideal world, a circular economy supply chain is very, very localized. And, you know, we will source materials locally, we'll manufacture materials locally, we'll supply to a local marketplace. You know, and when you think about that, what we're asking to do there, or what the statement we're making is that we're ending globalization. Now, that's a big one, particularly when you take it into context of, you know, we're just going to take the European market, and thanks to Richard for pulling, Richard Taylor at Graphic Strategy for putting together some numbers, but the numbers are not massively relevant, and, you know, some may argue that they're not incorrect, but you know, what this is really telling us is we make a load of stuff, we export an awful lot of it, we also import an awful lot of stuff, and what that means is we're flying, we're sailing, we're shipping an awful lot of stuff to a lot of far-flung destinations. We're bringing a lot of stuff in from far-flung destinations which don't exactly, which pretty much compromise, you know, some of the core principles of a circular economy. But there are things that we can do. You know, the reality is that we're not going to change a supply chain process anytime soon and in any great hurry. However, there are things that we can do. We can look at closed loop manufacturing and looking at our suppliers and make sure that they are, you know, working towards or achieving best practice with regards to, I mean, as an example, the plastic injection molding companies, you know, we can look at how they take all of their byproduct from the first process and how they recycle that and reuse that product and that material. We can look at making sure our supply chain are sourcing ethically and they are producing sustainably, and that they can certify that that's happening. And then, of course, yes, we can look at logistics. And, you know, if we have to ship from far-flung places, can we have the wherewithal to put that on a boat, which is marginally less environmentally damaging than putting something in an aeroplane? Of course, if we can localize all of this, then we're ticking a lot more boxes. Then we're looking at service solutions. You know, we talked around reuse, refurbish, before ultimately we get to recycle. And you know, we should really embrace as an industry, and we're beginning to see the industry embracing the principle of servicing existing products that are in the marketplace once they've got to the end of their first, you know, usable life. We see examples of that now by companies in the UK like ShopLight, who have their Relight division, where they're taking product off of site, they're assessing the condition of that product and either you know, refurbishing, you know, recommissioning that product and putting it back into the marketplace. you know, and that really does give us options to begin to create circles within circles, and how we develop circular solutions within our lighting industry. But there's something that we can really do, and I suppose it links into Internet of Things, is that we begin to understand where these products are in their circular life. So beginning to understand or have the ability to assign information to product, right? Can we actually treat them as assets that we can track over multiple lives? Now, this is stuff that you can implement now and will cost a little bit more money. But in the principle of service centres and in the principle of moving forwards, then we can implement ways of managing time, and that's not something that's unnatural to people of a certain age, because if your starter motor used to go in the car, you could go to the garage and you could buy a new one, or you could buy a reconditioned one at a lower price.
Simon, just a reminder on time.
Yeah, I'm nearly there. So my third point, and it's a very quick one, which is it's a long way from perfect. So our utopia is circular economy. Everything there is no waste. Everything is just reused and reused and reused. The reality is that this is our current state, and there are gaps, but we can create, you know, circular solutions, and it's far from perfect, you know, but we do have all the ingredients. If we have the will, then we can achieve it. And that is my talk. I'm going to hand you over to Richard Garrett from Signify, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very, very much indeed, Simon. Those gremlins are hanging around. I think are we good to go?
Okay, now.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you very, very much indeed for your time today, and thank you so much, Simon. I think it leads in quite nicely to our statement and our position on sustainability. So, my name is Richard Garrett. I am marketing manager for the OEM division of Signify for the UK and Ireland. And my history and background has been in product development, product marketing, product management, and Suzanne, I'm just struggling to shift the slides along.
You have, it's taken time, there's a delay, but
okay, no problem.
Okay for next.
Thank you, thank you. So innovation has been a massive part of my background, and it's a little bit of an overused term, should we say. I think it's fair to say everybody's innovating, and it's a fantastic thing that we all are focused in that direction. But innovation is often being linked to product, not necessarily a mindset. And everything that we're talking about today is an innovation of mindset. It's quite different. Being part of Signify, I've done a few talks on sustainability over the last 3-4 years, and generally the statements come back are quite similar. Are you aware of how the economy works? Because it's not like that. And I get the technique. You discredit the person, you discredit the point. But ultimately, I think the question that people are asking, whether it's as direct as that, or whether it's something like, oh, my customers aren't asking for it, the clarification that people want really is, does it make business sense? And so I just waiting for the slide to shift on a bit. Ultimately, I'll start off with where we're positioned at the moment. So there's a whole load of stats. I'll let you read it through. I won't go through one by one. But ultimately, yes, it makes business sense, and I would say that, wouldn't I? From 2015, our entire business model has been focused towards sustainability, and by the end of 2020, we'll be a carbon neutral company. We've signed up to 6 UN SDGs, such as Sustainable Development Goals. They are affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, a climate action, and as of yesterday, we signed up to another 2, which is good health and well-being, and decent work and economic growth. So I start off with saying where we are as a model to say it works, it continues, we continue to grow as a company, we continue to grow as an industry. But I think people are looking more towards an ROI view. What is the return of investment? If I start investing now, when will I see my money come back? And I think John hit the point on the head earlier. It's not a return of investment model. It's what happens if you don't. What happens if you don't do these things? And ultimately, I'm in a wonderful position where a lot of my colleagues take a lot of pride from being part of what will be a carbon neutral company by the end of this year. There's a shame that can go along with working for a company that are doing the wrong things. And this is the way that I think that the market's going to move towards. Sorry, Suzanne, it's still not shifting my slides along. Could you do it for me if you've got control? So what we tend to get into is a more nuanced discussion, understanding how broad sustainability is as a subject, and it's not simple to just jump on a bandwagon and run straight through. But when you know what you're doing and you understand, you're working with the partners who can hold you to account. So you're not just self-accrediting these things. You're working with the people who hold you to account, that push you in the right directions. You start to understand how the whole process becomes simpler and simpler over time because you're living and breathing it. So these stats are from the UN. They're also from an article from IMD, which was entitled "Why All Businesses Should Embrace Sustainability." But it also looks at a broader view. So how do we position ourselves as a company? But who are we with? And we're in very good company. Like sort of Cisco, Adidas, Alphabet, Siemens, Nike. They all have at the center of their business model a sustainability strategy, and it's all linked together. Nike and Adidas looking at green supply chains, trying to eliminate plastics wastes. We've got Unilever is another good example. So they often utilize palm oil, which is a challenge. So moving towards organic palm oil. And it's understanding the slice of your pie that you can focus on and have the biggest effect on. So you look at your business, where are your biggest impacts on the environment coming from? And that clarifies how you can focus your area and have the biggest impact, not by trying to do everything, but trying to do the biggest, having the biggest effect on the environment in a positive way. We're all very familiar, I'm sure, on Microsoft and their promise to repay their carbon debt. It's a fantastic initiative. The lighting industry is a little bit older than the software industry, so I don't know how we could ever possibly calculate that. But if there's any way that we could start pushing towards that's a fantastic initiative to focus on, and whatever learnings we can take from the likes of Microsoft would be incredibly valuable. And Pepsi and Coke, traditionally the bad guys of multi-conglomerates, they're looking at water stewardship and water replenishment as is a key element to their sustainability goals. So it's not necessarily what am I doing, what can I make an effect, there's a lot of effort, is it really worth it? It's understanding the stories that are going on in not just the massive companies around the world. Around 500 businesses globally now have a sustainability strategy linked to their overall business strategy. It's what happens if you don't. It's the alternative to your return of investment. But bringing it back into the lighting industry, again, we're driven a lot of the time by our end users. Sorry, Suzanne, can you move the slide on, please? Thank you. We're driven by our end users. Sometimes we're in a traditional relationship with a customer. It's a supplier, it's a customer, and you have your back and forth, and you manage your accounts, and you work with them based on demands and things like that. And other times there's more of a partnership approach where you can grow together. You can work on a project that's trying to achieve a joint outcome, which is a dream scenario, and I think that's going to become more and more common over the years. But I've picked these 4 main areas of our industry as good examples of where we're starting to see a lot of really positive movements. In education, there's a charity called SEED, excuse me, and that stands for Sustainable Environmental Education. They've got about 250-ish members, and they're looking to drive sustainability into the national curriculum. But not only that, their members have to walk the walk. They have to practice what they teach. And for the lighting world, that's often been, I've got a product that's 170 lumen per watt. Ah, but mine's 173 lumen per watt. Oh, but mine's 180 lumen per watt. And we have this sort of battle, and that's good. It's good that we're focusing on getting the most efficient solution into buildings. That's correct. But we're being a bit myopic. We're not looking at the broader scale. And this is moving from education into offices and especially into industry. Industry being at the forefront, I think, of a lot of the changes that we're seeing in sustainable business management and practices. But we're still seeing conversations that are comparing lumen per watt. When one fixture's air freighted from China and is a single-use product, okay, 50,000 hours is a nice lifetime, but it's still a single-use product being shipped over from China. And we're only judging our sustainability based from our doorstep. And we're starting to see that move in a broader way. We're all very familiar with LEED and BREEAM, which is focusing on the efficacy and efficiency of a building. And now the conversation is broadening out to say, how else can we manage our sustainability? What's our carbon footprint of building this office space or upgrading this industrial estate? And we can be far more focused on things like eco-modularity. We look at serviceable luminaires. How can we keep a fixture in place for as long as possible and upgrade the components? We've got technology now in so many of our drivers that allows us to enable digital twin technology, and that can create an artificial intelligence based format of what your hardware is on site. So this will take the data that says, here's your ambient temperature, here's the amount of hours that you've been burning so far, and let's be honest, on the back of a fact packet we scribbled down roughly what we thought the lifetime of this fixture is. Actually, in reality, we're looking at about 7 years, so actually it's pretty good. And then we can start building in different business models to say, if you're struggling with CapEx, which may be a reality in the future, can we include lighting to just cost you a monthly figure? So your hardware, your installation, your maintenance, if it's connected, all your connected configurations, but also your upgradability package is all in this monthly cost for your lighting. And this allows us to have a new business model, indeed, but also ensure that our relationships continue to make sure that when a product becomes end of life, so in my world, that's now boards and drivers, they're upgradable, optics are replaceable, diffusers are replaceable, and we can look at an entirely different way of servicing our lighting end users. Suzanne, can you pop the slide across, please? Thank you. So I'm going to talk to you about 3D printing. Although it's not part of my current remit, I spent 3 years bringing the technology to market. And sometimes it's the charismatic stuff that gets the attention, but actually some of the minutiae I feel is really important. So at Signify, we've got our supplier sustainability declaration. It's available on our website. And this shows everybody how we audit and onboard new suppliers. That includes substances management, so we can sign up our customers to a BOM check. They can put a driver code into the system and it tells you exactly what substances are included within this fixture. That includes conflict minerals, things like tin and gold. We need to make sure that we're not directly or indirectly funding any human rights atrocities and that they're mined in a responsible way. That can be 7 or 8 steps down the supply chain. But any of our suppliers who are supplying us any component that contains tin, gold, tantalum, anything, any potential conflict materials, they need to be able to report to us that it's sourced responsibly and in no way, shape or form, and it includes the geographical location, no way, shape or form can possibly be funding any human rights atrocities. And often when you work with a new supplier, their carbon footprint can increase. And so their carbon disclosure to us is important. That goes into our annual report, and that also goes into our positioning in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. So for the last 3 years, we've been #1 in our category, and we want to continue that. And this is part of what forms at the absolute grassroots level. What are we doing? But then also, as I say, we are investing in new technologies. Zoltán, can you progress the slide, please? Thank you. And that's 3D printing. So as I say, I was part of the team that brought this to the UK market. And my first question, much like many people's, is why? And there's a customer element, of course. It's a tailored design, able to change the textures, color, format of any of these products. We've got pendants, downlights, surface mount and suspended pendants, and across the board. This technology allows you to implement changes to a design in a far easier and far more ecological way, environmentally friendly way, versus some of the traditional components used, like aluminium and steel. But 3D printing is not new. For several years, you've been able to purchase a 3D printer and create models or whatever you want to do. So the application of it's quite new for the lighting industry, especially when you talk about a fully finished fixture. So bringing that to a scalable solution is quite important as well. So we've got our main customer is a retail customer. So Marks and Spencer's have purchased about 25,000 of these fixtures to date. That's purchased on order or in plan. But also it's a circularity around the design, reducing the bill of materials quite dramatically, because you're able to 3D print components that you would have otherwise shipped from across the world, perhaps. Things like screws perhaps are less required, because products are able to click into place and designed to be secure in that way. Zoltán, can you progress the slide on, please? And ultimately, we end up in a position where our product portfolio is a lot broader. This is just a couple of examples of a downlight and a track-mounted spot. Looking at things like material to supply, manufacturing, transport, and also how efficient it is to recycle the housing at end of life. So acid dipping and removing paintwork from some fixtures is quite a tricky process, whereas with 3D printing, we're able to get to a position where we can completely recycle the housing back into a luminaire again, potentially. But the carbon savings are product dependent. The track-mounted spot went into Marks and Spencer's. There's a 24% saving versus the metal variant produced before. And in some cases, it's a lot more than that. So this is an aluminium die-cast downlight over to a 3D printed version, and we're talking about 75% savings there. So we've got to have some people in our business who are very excited about this and saying that it's the bigger revolution than LED potentially. Time will tell. So it's a very interesting technology, and it's working with all the right thoughts and the right processes in mind. Whether it becomes the next big thing, we will see. And I think it's a good technology to keep an eye on. And that's everything from me. So thank you very, very much indeed for your time. And I look forward to some questions at the end, hopefully. Thank you.
Okay, can I start?
Yep, you've got controls, Zoltán, but if not, give me a shout and I'll move them on, but it should be with you.
All right, let me see if I can move the slide. Oh, yes. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Zoltán Pilter. I work for TUNGSRAM Group. And just maybe a few words for those of you not familiar with this company. It's a 124 years old company established in 1896. We have a long history. We've gone through several periods during our history, and just very recently we've become Hungary-based multinational manufacturer since April 2018. And now we're still, as a small middle-sized enterprise dedicated to the lighting industry, and looking forward to work with other companies on all the latest developments on circular economy. First of all, myself, I'm for the 22nd year of business in the company. And from that, I spent 10 years with regulatory developments and policy shaping. And with that, I've seen through all the big changes of the lighting market, starting from the incandescent lamps being the highest quantity sold across the globe, to phase them out and to come to revolutionary LED technologies to overtake practically almost all of the existing technologies slowly but surely. So this paradigm shift gives us an incredible power to change things and to use more advanced technologies, which we couldn't even dream 10 or 20 years ago. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit more on the practical side, and you know, I could catch several things that had been mentioned by the speakers before me. I think these are all around the same logic, and so that it is good to see that we are not alone. Yeah. So the model of the linear economy is pretty well known. I think I don't really have to explain. So this is what we've been using for throughout the history. And I remember the time again for the incandescent lamps when a lighting system was a very simple one. Had a lamp, had a luminaire, had practically in some case a control gear, and basically the wiring. And so that was very simple, and it had some sort of modularity, but that was it. Fortunately, at that time, materials were very simple. Plastic was not that much used. But today, we have to live with the situation that the new products sometimes seal for life in plastic housing, and therefore facing with the limitations of replaceability, repairability, maintenance, and so on. So another well-known diagram that has been used in our discussions on the Lighting Europe, our major lighting industry association in Europe. We as TUNGSRAM are, of course, a dedicated member of this association. So we're trying to find our role into this game, and so to add as much as we can as a company into this. So brainstorming of what else we can add to this circularity program, apart from services for maintenance, for refurbishing, the part harvesting and recycling. Obviously, we can catch several parts of these in regulations and actual activities on a voluntary basis by companies, as also the speakers had mentioned before me, that especially Simon had this nice diagram where he showed the ideal circular world for which we still need certain parts to complement and to complete the circle. We've been thinking ourselves of what else we can do apart from the well-known circles into this. And we have come with an idea, and a good colleague of mine came with a brilliant idea to put reconfiguration on top of what we already have on the table. It's not that much on how to regulate, on what policies are we making, but reconfiguration might be a simple option, an additional feature to products that manufacturers can offer to the user. And to live with that, they can extend durability, extend performance, and of course, the features of a certain product. So again, to add to the 4 circles, we add a 5th circle, which is reconfiguration, and that's the tailoring of a product during the installation or in the use phase. It depends on what we exactly want to do. But the point is that we maintain the original function, so that's still lighting, obviously, and it has a purpose for lighting certain objects or areas. What we mean by the reconfiguration, and here I just really want to give a short example on street lighting. And yeah, this can again happen before the installation or before the first use. It could mean certainly replacement of certain elements, critical elements that are easy to replace and to give additional features to the product. Like it could be a simple thing as a driver software update to extend the functionalities, or adding a new lighting scheme by the replacement of the certain components, or actually the software again. Creating new lighting functions by adding new components like optics or other control units, or boosting the performance by simply replacing certain components, again, like the driver, the LED chip package, or whatever. Thinking even further, what else we can do apart from this reconfiguration? We find that the lighting as a primary purpose is not necessarily the only functionality of a certain product that we can leverage. And there came another idea. If we can add, again, another circle of additional functions and users, which means that we look beyond the actual primary purpose or primary use of a certain product by looking for advantages for users, not necessarily for the lighting, and what features we can take out of this. Just again to highlight these additional functions, users beyond the lighting could use the existing software and hardware, of course, and we could use or take the advantage of collecting data for the lighting users to use for another purpose. So just to explain, again, if you allow me for the street lighting example, to look beyond lighting, I think further sensors, allowance of the use of the existing network connections or the data sharing could give us the opportunity for installing even further sensors such as radars or weather control sensors, road conditions monitoring sensors. And then there's a wide range of equipment that we can list here. Or the allowance of existing network connections where we collect the control data for the equipment. We could use it for other purposes like 5G data services, or like I mentioned, the weather monitoring. And of course, sensors beyond lighting, such as we can install a panic button at the pole, the street lighting pole, or a sensor for the waste basket located nearby the pole, and so that it can add certain value to the entire value chain. And of course, using the collected data for other purposes, like I said, the traffic control is one, and then to input all the data that's collected from this traffic control into an artificial intelligence system could take a lot of advantages for designing the entire traffic around that place. And of course, there's several other opportunities to extend that could be multiple users, not necessarily just one. And then either one can decide on which additional features want to use. Another important point or aspect that we had addressed ourselves is, okay, so we want to start with circular economy. That's fine. And we've seen that there are certain steps already made and some other steps are still to be developed and found out. And at some point, regulations might help us to achieve our goals. But of course, companies will have to volunteer themselves to make steps. We all have to make the change. But okay, when we do this change, and then we want to measure the advance of our steps, how do we do that? Obviously, we have to have some sort of measurement system which we can apply. And of course, there are certain parameters. If something is not measurable on an objective way, then it always brings the question whether this is right or not. We want to compare apple to apple and not to make mistakes. So for why necessary to make a common evaluation system is simple. We want to be transparent, measurable, and comparable. And are there any risks? Of course. There are risks. We have to be careful of them, but that's why we have to commonly think and agree on a certain system that can deliver a trustful result. Sorry, I jumped.
I've not touched anything, Zoltán. I'll get you back to you.
No, I just jumped the page down button, but it certainly didn't do what I wanted.
Leave it to me, I'll get back to your presentation.
Can you please put me back where I was? Sorry for that.
It's this one, yeah?
Yes, correct. Okay. And to make only one step at a time. Okay. Okay, maybe I have to request control again.
I'll do it. Just give me the nod and I'll move them on, Zoltán.
Okay, so just want to move to the next one, please. All right. Okay, so talking about a measurement system, and obviously this is not the ultimate solution that I'm showing here. It's just showcasing one example of what it could be. And so this has been developed with my colleagues. And so we're using this internally to see where our products are, and then we try to make some benchmarking with other manufacturers. But obviously, as I said, a critical part of this is to be a common agreement among other manufacturers. Yeah, so what we did is just as an example, we had made a point ranking system where we had broken down the different phases into blocks. And then the first block would be for 30 points of measurement points before the use of the product. And among these parameters, we could, of course, list many other parameters, but we thought the critical ones could be, for example, the luminous flux per weight, or the ROHS, the hazardous substance content, or how much % of the packaging material could be recycled. And last but not least, what environmental and quality systems the manufacturing facility can operate against. And of course, there's 3 levels that we have put into this, like a basic, a medium, and an outstanding. So I'm not going to go through all the details. On the table that you can see that we have put for the basic requirements, very simple things, and then for the medium and something a bit more advanced, and then an outstanding would be something that we would expect ourselves to achieve. It is just for the one example, the last point for the qualification systems, we would consider both exist to achieve the maximum points. Yeah, yeah, in the operating phase, and in this case, we would look for performance and endurance parameters. The indicators could be like the lighting efficiency or the useful lifetime, the light output, whether it's controllable or not. Is it ready for the remote control, or is a different solution to control the unit? And here again, we can see the basic, the medium, and outstanding levels to achieve. So for light efficiency, we would consider the light output outstanding if it can access the 130 lumen per watt, which can be rapidly moved again to a higher value as LEDs are still in a booming period where the developments are coming every 6 to 8 months with complete new generations onto the market. Or the useful lifetime, yeah, and the light output controllable, if it's programmable at manufacturing, already is an advantage. And then another block for indicators for the mechanical endurance and protection for the IP rating or the IK rating for the mechanical strength. Furthermore, sorry, can you go to the next one?
We're getting close to time now, Zoltán.
Ah, okay, excellent. All right. And then in the installation and maintenance phase, which is for the extendability during the use phase, we have further parameters for a maximum of 50 points. And here the indicators could be how easy is the installation and the maintenance is. How quickly can the users access the certain components and parts to replace, whether they have to use a special unit or tool to do that, or whether the programming is actually available, yes or no. Is it possible to do it just on site, or could it be by remote on the internet, and so on. So together, these blocks and the measurements come to the complete score, and then this is the way how we think that the different solutions can be comparable. Next one, please, Susan, if you don't mind. Thank you. Okay, and of course, finally, let's not forget that there's an after-use phase, end of life. We give a 40-point score to this. And this is a very important one, has been in the lighting industry, had put a lot of efforts into the WEEE and to achieve very good results of collecting and recycling waste. It is very important that with this technological change from, as I said at the beginning, from the almost full metal and glass light bulbs to LED, which is using more freely plastics. And sometimes very hard to control what sort of plastics are mixed in the waste. So it is very important that the homogeneous parts can be separated easily and quickly. And how many steps are needed for that, doing that? Or what's the proportion of recycled materials? Obviously, the ideal would be 100% in this case. So we are about to achieve the maximum. And whether there are contractual partners of doing that. Obviously, it is mandatory in every member state, but still, it is important to know what is behind, what industry is behind to manage this and to partner up. And of course, Recolight is our major partner in the UK, but we can say that in all other member states, we have dedicated partners of handling it.
We need to move on now, Zoltán, because we're really running out of time.
Okay, all right. That will be very quick. It's just 2 sentences, pretty much, if you don't mind to put me to the next. All right. So, and finally, I just want to show one example again, staying with the street lighting luminaire concept for circular economy. And one side on maintenance and repair. It is very important that, like in the scoring table, you could already see, to access the certain components and parts and the easiness of replacement. So if you can jump to the next one, Susan, please. Yeah. So a driver replacement without tool would be one solution. If we can just simply open with one press without using any certain tool, just manually, then a driver can be easily removed and replaced. So that's so simple. Okay, there's no tool use for that, and then close it back. So we save time and save a lot of effort. Or another way around is to come to the LED optics. Can we move to the next one, Susan, please? Yeah, again, same way, opening the housing without any tool, remove the entire top, and then to put another one back with a new LED optics or possibly another driver, and close it down again, and it works. So this is just one concept. Of course, there could be many other solutions around it. And yeah, this is just to start somewhere. Okay. Can we jump to the last page, Susan? Yeah, thank you. And just to summarize again, so where we're coming from is to start with a full circle economy model, and that we have added 2 other circles possible to extend sustainability of the systems. And this is mainly as a voluntary action by manufacturers. And also had showcased a simple model of how to measure and compare readiness for circular economy, and just a simple concept of how to optimize street lighting luminaire for circular economy. Thank you very much. This was last, and I would like to invite Russell Parr from Primelight to take over from me as next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Zoltán. Just take over the screen.
Yep, I've given you control.
Great, thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us. I just wanted to give a very brief overview of who Primelight are, talk about some of our procurement practices, and then just give a few stats about plastics, which you may find interesting. So Primelight is a component solutions provider to the lighting industry. We were established in 1992, and we have a very strong and trusted position within the market in the supply of high quality components to the industry.
And as a component solutions provider, Primelight has a vast product range covering everything needed to build a luminaire or a spotlight through to all the elements needed for an integrated and efficient installation. This includes everything from gear trays to drivers, LED boards to wiring and connectors, right the way through to lighting controls, optics, lighting track, and latterly emergency solutions. Primelight has a number of exclusive distribution agreements with lots of global manufacturers, and that gives us an unrivaled range of products, which is from trusted, importantly audited and reliable sources. We have quite a large UK warehouse, and at any one moment we're holding over 2 million items of stock right the way across our range of product. We also offer some design and commissioning support, and we work closely with our customers to support vendor consolidation and helping them to create efficiencies within their supply chains. And off the back of that, Primelight is positioned as a supply chain partner with lots and lots of UK lighting OEMs, contractors and wholesalers, as well as other industries, including catering and facilities management. So that's a little bit about us. And just moving on. Whoops, something went wrong there, Suzanne. Hang on a second.
From current slide.
Try that again. Whoops, there we go. Okay, so earlier on, if everybody remembers that John mentioned the vital importance of a sustainable and responsible supply chain, and Primelight takes this incredibly importantly as well. So each of our suppliers are audited, and that's on multiple fronts, but primarily that includes items such as environmental management. Do they or are they accredited to ISO 14001 and in some cases 50001 as well? And do they actively publish those environmental plans to their key partners? Do all of those suppliers then make use of recycled materials, and do they have that sustainability plan in place to do that? And also, do those suppliers or are those suppliers starting to work towards the use of alternative materials? So things like plant-based materials around plastics and so on. And what that does is that gives a responsible and a very progressive and sustainable procurement platform, which helps us to support our customers. And therefore, Primelight gives them a one-to-many supplier relationship for those responsibly sourced lighting components. So just something that clearly everybody in the industry is talking about and is in some cases considering, but in some cases also businesses have taken a dramatic step forwards like Primelight in order to adopt these types of plans. Just talking about plastics, lots of things that we wouldn't have without them, and it's fair to say that they were one of the key things inside the Industrial Revolution that was also talked about. But since 1955, we've created more than 7.8 billion tons of plastic waste. A majority of the plastic that was ever produced, unless it's been burnt, still exists today in various different forms. And if you think about global production, in 1955, we produced 1.5 million tons of plastic globally. In 2018, that was 359 million tons. And by 2025, that's predicted to exceed 500 million tons. So huge amounts of use of plastics, but still yet no real way of ensuring that we reuse as much of that as possible. And for those of you that don't know, plastic is, or traditional plastics are 100% man-made. It's not a natural polymer. And that means that Mother Nature hasn't really figured out a way of how to break it down. And so plastics will never ever disappear. They will just change form to a certain degree. And again, lots of people know this, but it takes 450 years for one plastic bottle to degrade. And by degrade, that means just broken down into minute parts rather than actually be consumed and fully degraded by the environment. But as I say, without plastics, we would have no modern medicine, we would have no computers, and we'd have no modern lighting. So we do have to be thankful to it for certain things, but clearly we have to use it in a much more sustainable way. Just a little bit about the timeline of plastics. Way back in the late 1800s, plastics started to come to the market and started to be manufactured, and everybody will remember Bakelite, or lots of people will anyway. But interestingly, in the early 1940s, Henry Ford began experimenting with soy-based plastics. And it was just then with the advent of World War II that all of that innovation stopped for quite some time. And what you can see there from that timeline is things like plastic bags, reusable plastic bags, were introduced 43 years ago. Single-use plastic bottles were introduced 52 years ago. And it's only now that the planet and the world is waking up to the message that most of those are now in our oceans and aren't being recycled as much as they could and should be. But if you fast forward to today, what we've found is with our partner Alcomet, they've now introduced the first plant-based lighting extrusion for the industry. And this graph is intended to show that, you know, we've got 80 years since the first experiments in using plant-based plastics and using those sustainable natural resources, right the way through to today when we're only just really starting to adopt them. So much lost time, and hopefully we can begin to make some of that up. And so just talking about very briefly about the relationship Primelight has with Alcomet. We have been partners for more than 20 years, supporting our lighting partners here in the UK. We have a very exclusive and close distribution partnership. Alcomet is an ISO certified partner, having both 14001 and 50001. We know that Alcomet uses recycled materials, and as I previously mentioned, they're now using plant-based sustainable materials for creation of their lighting extrusions. And so on that note, I'll hand over to my good friend Torsten to talk to you a little bit more about how they're using those plant-based materials to create some new and innovative products.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Russell. Do I have the controller ready?
It's going a bit slow, sorry. Can you just bear with me, Torsten?
Uh-huh.
If you can press control again. Russell had a hyperlink on his slide to his email address, so I clicked on that to give you control, and it's opened up an email. Can you bear with me? Okay.
All right. Is it working now?
Press, yeah. Just do it one more time. That's like lesson learned for webinar. I don't have a hyperlink on your presentation. Right. Request again, Torsten, and you're there.
Yeah.
Just give me the nod and I'll move your slides on.
Okay, I think I have the control, so sorry for that. I give you just a brief overview. Well, first of all, thank you, Richard, for introducing me. I know I'm last in line, but hopefully not least. I know also that we are all a little bit over time, so I try not to hurry through, but give you a brief overview only about Alcomet, and then going into detail with the Alka Circle options we have with Alcomet. So I'm manager sales. My name is Thorsten Werner, and work at Alcomet Kunststofftechnik in Germany. It's an owner-managed company with approximately 1,200 employees worldwide. And we have different business units working with the automotive industry, building industry, but also with lighting. As Richard already mentioned, we are ISO 14001 and 50001 certified, but also work with the IATF norm 16949. And we have some materials which are ISCC certified, which is one part of our Alka Circle program, which is supporting the circular economy. Just as a little overview, we produce extrusions for lighting, profiles, tubes, but also technical profiles using technologies such as monoco or tree extrusion. and we use the main materials which are used for the lighting market, such as PMMA or polycarbonate. And then we have our own materials called, for example, Alkalet to hide hotspots, Alkaflex to be used in a co-extrusion process as a gasket. And you also see some of our main customers, especially from the UK, in our customers list, such as, for example, Signify or the Zumtobel Thorn Group, ASD, and so on. This gives you a little idea about what I'm talking. It's diffusers for the lighting industry. So we are a supplier of lighting companies, and we produce not only extrusion profiles, but as I said, also co-extrusion profiles with different materials in one extrusion process or different colors in one extrusion, and the possibilities between diffusers and lenses, which are specially made with very different material thicknesses to support light direction of a lens. Or we produce technical profiles, for example, track lighting profiles, where we already include copper wires into the extrusion during the extrusion process. Manufacturing is one part of Alkamet, so that you not only get the extrusion from us, we also do milling, welding, cutting, gluing processes at Alkamet. We bring end caps with a ultrasonic welding machine onto your diffuser, so that we could, for example, deliver the whole diffuser, including end caps, and you just have to mount it on your body. But I'm here to talk about Alka Circle, which is one option of the different programs we offer at Alkamet. And Alka Circle is an option or a possibility to use several different materials based on renewable resources. It's a contribution to a more sustainable plastic industry. And what we want to do is we offer the possibilities, for example, to use standard polycarb, but also use specially developed polycarbonate, which I just heat onto, or a scrap material which can be reused for your product. So in the end, you have different options and you can use all of them with Alkamet. One of the options, for example, is a material called CAB, cellulose acetobutyrate. Sorry for that, but it's a really crazy name. But it consists of 45% of renewable raw materials called cellulose, and has superb optical properties. It's very flexible and easy to be bent, and it's UL listed, so that we use it, for example, for products which we ship to the United States. There's a possibility to use a material called the DuraBio, which is based on sorbitol. It's a widely available feedstock. And compared with PC and PMMA, it has an excellent light transmittance and UV resistance, but it's also resistant against scratches and mechanical impacts. So it has both the positive effects of polycarb and PMMA in one material. There's the material called True Circle, which has more or less the same mechanical and optical possibilities as a standard polycarb, but it's specially mixed polycarbonate, which uses approximately 59% of renewable tall oil according to a mass balance basis, and tall oil is gained from the processing of wood. So this is a typical bio-based material which can easily be changed against a standard polycarb, and then you would do something for your own CO2 footprint in using this special material. And for this material, we also have the ISCC certificate available. There's a material in use called Vestamid Terra, which is up to 100% bio-based, and it's one from castor oil. It's flame retardant versions available, and it's impact modified, so that we use some where we have the possibility to use it together with glass fiber, for example, which leads to very high stability. As I already mentioned, and Richard also already did it, we also use recycled material, so we can win production waste with scrap material. We reuse it for our next production steps, and you for sure have a significant better environmental record than using new granulate. And the properties, especially the mechanical properties, are according to the standard polycarb material. The optical properties are for sure a little bit less, but you know, you always have to have some advantages and disadvantages if using recycled material in comparison to the standard polycarb. Here's a little overview about the certificates. I don't really want to read or give you all the details about it. It's just a brief overview about the ISCC, the ISO 14001, and the ISO 50001 certificate. And the idea behind Alcamet and all the possibilities we offer is that you, as our customers or potential customers, as a developer or a designer, you can use all the different options from Alcamet, for example, bio-based material, together with co-extruded product, together with, for example, microprismatic structure, bring it together in your own product development and have a unique product just for one customer, because then we have a customized profile and produce this specially for you as our customer. Yeah, thank you for your attention. You see my contact details here. If you have any questions, please come back to me, and I give over to Ray Molony for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Torsten. That certainly wasn't the least of our presentations. Fascinating new materials that we can use in our luminaires going forward. And thank you to all our speakers. The guys have been really busy answering questions in the Q&A box, but it'd be nice to share some of them with the wider group. So Sophie Parry brings up an important point, which is that, you know, as we move away from a throwaway age and throwaway luminaires towards materials that allow the products to be used safely, and, you know, if we reverse engineer them so that there's use it as serviceable parts and it's reparable, isn't this going to push the price up? And, you know, luminaires and lighting is going to cost more if we tick all these sustainable boxes. Now, Simon, I know you answered that question directly to Sophie, but you want to share your thoughts on what's going to happen? Are we going to see more expensive luminaires?
It was a great question, Sophie, and I think in kind of my response is like, actually, you know, we're developing fixtures that have degrees of flexibility or improved degrees of flexibility, and the simple metric is, you know, we're putting more in, and therefore the price is likely to go up. I think the big question then is, you know, can that then multiply to increase the sell price, right? And actually, you know, our market has been driven so heavily in recent years by principally efficiency and cost. They've been the only two kind of credible metrics for quite some time. So, you know, when we start thinking about well-being, and when we start thinking about sustainability, and we start thinking about circular principles, how we introduce control, if you know, then all of these things come at a price. And actually, you know, I kind of alluded in the written response I gave, is actually it's probably it's an interesting topic to open up for a separate you know, webinar or discussion around, you know, how do we make sure that the value that we're driving in through the design process and through the materials that we're using, how do we make sure that that gets realized as something that is profitable for end user?
But the bottom line is, Simon, you know, prices are going to rise. If we're going to engineer products.
Sorry.
Simon was making a point that, you know, luminaire prices will rise if we're going to, you know, make them sustainably.
They have to, yeah.
Yeah, they have to. A number of people are making a point about, while applauding Signify and the development goals and sustainability, saying, you know, this is not so easy for national brands and SMEs. And Russell, I'd be interested in your view on that. You know, how do you guys, you know, add those costs to the products that you're making and make them sustainable and still cost effective for the clients that aren't Marks and Spencers?
Okay, so I think the key thing to point out there is that Primelight aren't manufacturing any of the products. Obviously, we are a key distribution partner for the global manufacturers we represent. But where manufacturers are kind of introducing more cost into their products, they still have to have an eye on what the market is prepared to pay for that particular product. So that forces innovation to a certain degree as well for us to become more efficient, more effective with those products. And the close relationship that Primelight has with its global manufacturers means that we can give them the intelligence about market pricing to ensure that we don't see a huge amount of price inflation as they introduce those new products.
But isn't it about, you know, a level playing field? If everybody has to comply with the same regulations, then it's a level playing field, and the normal competitive measures apply.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Richard, did you want to come in on this as a global manufacturer? And you guys have obviously been, you know, doing all these goals and you know, making a sustainable and certainly leading the industry in sustainability, but you've got those added costs.
Yeah, it's you know, it is a big task. It's something that we started back in 2015 with our commitment to become carbon neutral. So it's actually a bigger project for the likes of us. There's a lot more for us to focus on, but there's small things we can all do. How do you power your manufacturing plants, and how do you power your offices? Are they utilizing renewable sources? How can you upgrade your packaging your solutions for energy? Can you make sure that your energy's comes from a renewable source? That's something that I've done myself personally in my house. I've made sure that when I upgrade, when I change my tariff, it goes over to you know. So there are an awful lot of things that we can do from an individual level, and on a global level, it is a big project. That's why it's taken a little bit of time for us, and we're not necessarily known as an industry for being the kindest to the planet when you look back on history. So there's a lot of learnings that we can do. The LED revolution helped a lot, but again, that made us a little myopic in looking at building efficiency as a separate subject to sustainability overall. So yes, it's not a simple a path. It's something that needs to be taken into account. But I think your point is absolutely right. Let's try and get everybody on the same on the same platform to make the biggest impact we possibly can. And that needs to be driven from the right areas, and then we're held account as well as anyone else. So an SME is held on the same levels as we will be held upon, and we're all aiming in the right direction. And a lot of the nuance comes around making sure that we all understand what the right direction look like, that we're all heading north, and some of us aren't heading northeast and northwest, which is the same rule for us should apply to everyone else, whatever rules and regulations come in place.
But for somebody like Marks and Spencer, you know, there is a price premium on a 3D printed luminaire, but you're selling on a whole life cost.
Yes, so Marks and Spencers were unique. I'm aware that a lot of projects we get asked for sustainability statements, and that's all. No one ever mentions sustainability again. I'm convinced that will change over time. I feel that our end users will drive us in the way that Marks and Spencers drove us to say, let's work out carbon footprints of how much it costs for in carbon for each store to be upgraded. That was a really unique approach from an engaged customer. I know that's today, we're relying on a lot of our end users, and hopefully by asking the right questions at the right time, we're able to, like webinars such as this, we're able to change the conversation over time. It will take time. It will take time. And Marks and Spencers they're just as challenging as other customers in regards to the price points. And I feel that maybe we've gone a step too far in some instances where the value of lighting hasn't been felt. So we need to build the value. We need to make sure that our end users are aware of the value that lighting can deliver, and part of that value is how sustainable the solution is that goes into to each of our end users.
Okay, we have Nigel Monaghan online asking about, when we move to this new world, who's going to police the level playing field among manufacturers? This might be a good point to bring in Nigel Harvey. Nigel, I think you're on as a panelist. Nigel is the CEO of Recolight and is heavily involved in the legislative framework and talking to government and talking to all the necessary bodies. So, Nigel, are you there somewhere? Are you out in the ether somewhere?
It's certainly a very valid question, because without good enforcement, then legislation can become very problematic. I think it's something that we all have to do, is be constantly banging on the door of government and saying, yes, by all means bring in these new regulations, but also make it enforceable, because it's so much easier for government to say this standard is mandatory than to also then say, and this is the way we're going to enforce it, and this is the way we're going to police it. So I don't think this is something that will ever go away. And part of the level playing field that we all crave is really strong, robust enforcement. And that comes from us all saying it again and again and again, unfortunately.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Nigel, but you would take the view that the way we drive this forward, legislation has to be the primary stick, and there are, obviously there's cultural changes and there's enlightened clients, etc. But the way we achieve change is through the law.
I think ultimately you need to do that, because that's what creates the level playing field. And in an ideal world, there wouldn't be a need for enforceable legislation, that we'd all of us be looking to the highest common denominator and the highest common factor that's actually going to take us all forward as an industry and as a society. But unfortunately, going back to the point about cost that was made earlier on, there's always the temptation to go for the lowest cost solution, and unfortunately, so in some ways, good sustainability does come at a cost. And so to make it's legislation that is needed if we're going to keep it fair.
Okay, we could talk about this all day, but we've been slightly beaten by the clock. So I'd like to thank Nigel, and I'd like to thank all our speakers today, Simon, John, Richard, Zoltán, Torsten, Russell, and you, Nigel. Thanks, Suzanne, for helping in the background to move those very sticky slides onwards. In about an hour, everybody should get an email which will have a link to, you can get the slide pack, you can download that in low resolution format. You'll also be able to check out a recording of this, so you can go back and see it again. You'll also get the contact details to the presenters, although they've done a brilliant job in answering nearly all of the questions that have come through. So that's been great. A final reminder that on Tuesday, the 15th of September at 11 o'clock will be the third webinar in this series, the Lighting Industry and the Circular Economy series, hosted by Recolight. So you can register for that on the website. That will focus on the size, the barriers, and the opportunities to the lighting industry commercially. There's 2 confirmed speakers already. Helen Looms, who's going to talk about the EU Recolight project, which is this, idealized luminaire that's demountable and deconstructable and got replaceable light source and control gear. And that is the product of a £4 million EU program. And also confirmed speaker is Michael Grubb, who's the creative director of Michael Grubb Studios. And he's going to be talking about the Relit project, where they have helped organize marrying up manufacturers with surplus product with community projects and charities, and getting luminaires reused again. So keep an eye out for that. And as I say, register for that on the website. Thank you everyone for your comments and all your questions and for staying with us. and we'll see you in September. Thank you again to all our brilliant speakers today, and we'll wrap up there. Thank you.